Now, the next kind of renewable energy that we have to study is geothermal energy. So, when we talk of geothermal energy, what geothermal energy is, it is simply the heat energy of the earth that is generated by various natural processes. And these natural processes, one of it can be heat from when the planet formed and accreted, which has not yet been lost. And apart from that, the decay of radioactive elements. These are the two factors which generate heat inside the earth, and that harnessing of that energy is geothermal energy. If you look at this picture, the temperature of the earth as you go down is also increasing, and this is the source of geothermal energy, or the heat inside the earth. Now, when we talk of the reservoirs for the geothermal energy, one reservoir can be geysers, boiling mud pot, volcanoes, and hot springs. So these all can be seen as reservoirs of geothermal energy, the areas from where the geothermal energy can be extracted. If you look at this diagram, the presence of geothermal energy is not as free as it is for solar energy or for wind energy, because it is only present at these lines, among these fractured lines. So if you look at these points, these are the major sources for you when it comes to geothermal energy. So if we talk about India, these are the regions where we have seen the presence of geothermal energy. One in Jammu Kashmir, the highest one is in Jammu Kashmir. Then these all are the other regions where we have seen geothermal energy in India. Now, if we talk about India, what is the condition of geothermal energy in India? First of all, the geothermal provinces are estimated to produce 10,600 megawatt power. The geothermal provinces in India are the Himalayas, Sohana, Western Coast, Cambay, Son, Narmada, Tapi region, Godavari, and Mahanadi. So these are the regions where we find geothermal energy in India. Then Reykjavik Geothermal will assist Thermax to set up pilot project in Puga village in Ladakh. The first operational commercial geothermal power plant is likely to come up in Andhra Pradesh with a capacity of 25 megawatt by Geo Syndicate Private Limited. So these are some of the facts with respect to geothermal energy. Not a very important source of energy as far as our country is concerned. For us, as far as the renewable energy is concerned, solar and wind energies are very, very important. Apart from that, biofuels are going to be very, very important. So these are the important sources of energy for us as far as renewable energy sources are concerned. If we talk about the advantages of geothermal energy, the first again is the fact that it is renewable and sustainable. There is no doubt about that. And why do we call it renewable and sustainable? The fact is that the thermal resources of the earth will again never run out and will always be around for as long as the earth is inhabitable. So that's why you can call it a renewable source of energy. Again, talking about being environmental friendly, geothermal energy is of course an environmentally friendly energy source when compared to fossil fuels such as coal, petroleum, or natural gas. The process that you have for producing the electricity from geothermal energy has a much lower impact on the environment than all the other fossil fuels that you have. So that's why it is an environmentally friendly source of energy. Then the third factor is constant supply. Now if you remember wind energy and solar energy, when we discussed there, they do not have a constant supply of power. So unlike those kind of energy technologies, geothermal energy power can provide a constant uninterrupted source of electricity. The benefit of constant supply makes geothermal energy a far more predictable means of generating electricity when compared to any other renewable energy source. So that is why this is a huge advantage with geothermal energy. Then the fourth point is the fact that it has a small footprint. So again, if you compare this with more mainstream power plants such as coal, oil, nuclear power plants, etc., geothermal power plants will require a relatively less amount of space. And although geothermal energy power plant will reach depths where a sufficient level of geothermal energy is stored, its land footprint will be very, very small. And since the land footprint is small, we can say that it has a small footprint. Now, as a matter of fact, the geothermal power is considered to have one of the smallest surface land, and in fact, geothermal power is considered to have one of the smallest surface land footprint per kilowatt of all the power that is generated by all the technologies which are in use today. So that's why it can be said to have one of the smallest footprints when compared to other energy sources. Then the fact is that it is cost effective. So now, see, although you can say that the geothermal power can be generated in specific areas only, the installations in those areas are considered highly cost effective. The electricity generated by geothermal power stations is considered to be one of the cheapest power source in use today. So that's why it is cost effective. Then low maintenance. So again, the initial cost of geothermal power plant is high. You can say that it is high. If you take into account the investment that is required for exploration, for drilling of wells, for the installation of plants. But once all these plants are built, they are considered to be very low maintenance when compared with other mainstream power plants. So that's why you can call it a low maintenance energy. Then the next one is the fact that it also has low noise, because generating electricity from geothermal energy is, see, once a geothermal power plant is built, the main source of noise comes from fans contained in its cooling system. The generator houses will often feature noise dampening materials to minimize the exterior noise, and that's why when you talk about the whole picture, it will have a low noise compared to the other sources of energy. And then the next advantage, of course, is that it reduces fossil fuel dependency and increases energy security. So again, but here there is one difference, that if you talk of energy security, this energy security exists not for the entire world, but only for certain countries in the world where the amount of harnessing of geothermal energy that is happening is very, very high. But it is not true for majority of countries in the world, and that's why you cannot say that all the countries will increase their energy security using geothermal energy. Again, if we look at the next point, job creation. Next important factor is, of course, job creation, because there was a report of 2014 by International Renewable Energy Agency that the geothermal energy supported 35,000 US jobs back in 2012 and 13. So that's why we know that for the countries where geothermal energy exists, it can become a good source of job creation. Then finally, the fact that it has huge potential. Now, you can say that the geographical limitations exist when it comes to geothermal energy technologies, but this power source has a massive potential. A recent study by Geothermal Energy Association estimated that just 6.5% of global geothermal energy potential has been tapped so far. So only 6.5% of the energy has been tapped, rest is still to be seen, and that's why it has a very huge potential that has not been tapped yet. Then if I come to the disadvantages of geothermal energy, the very first, of course, is the fact that it has geographical limitations. And you can say actually that it is one of the energy sources that is the most, and in fact you can say that geothermal energy is one source which is the most geography specific source known to man. The geothermal activity is at its best at the geographical, or you can say tectonic fault lines within the Earth's crust, and it is in these areas where geothermal power plants are considered to be the most effective. So few countries like, you can say, the United States, Iceland, Kenya. You can also add Philippines, Mexico also to the list. These are the ones that have found success in generating significant levels of electricity from geothermal energy resources. Rest have not been able to. Then the next factor is that there is a large investment that is needed. So upfront, the investment that is needed for geothermal power plant is considered very, very high compared with the investment required for power plants that produce electricity from other sources like, let's say, coal and petroleum. So a large portion of this cost is associated with the exploration and drilling of geothermal energy resources, the two processes that don't affect traditional power stations. So that's why the initial cost that is required is very, very high. Apart from that, the next disadvantage is the fact that it has environmental impacts. So if we are looking at the disadvantages of geothermal energy, there are various environmental impacts that should be noted. Below the Earth's surface lies an abundance of gases that are harmful to the environment and our atmosphere. During the production of geothermal power, gases can be released into the atmosphere. And these gases include hydrogen sulfide, carbon dioxide, ammonia, methane, boron, some of which can contribute to the global warming. Again, water quality is also considered as an environmental impact of geothermal energy. The chemicals that are used at some geothermal power plants have the potential to pollute the water table should any leakage occur at these places. So although the technology exists for safe, non-polluting use of geothermal fluids, there is always a potential for leakage to occur. And there are numerous environmental factors to consider when compared to the fossil fuel alternatives. Geothermal is actually one of the most environmental friendly sources of energy yet. So although there are environmental implications that have to be seen when you talk about geothermal energy, but still it is one of the cleaner sources of energy when compared to the fossil fuels. So that's why you can still call it a relatively clean energy. Then the next is the sustainability concern. So although geothermal energy in itself is considered to be highly sustainable, there exists a sustainability concern which is associated with how do we use it. Studies have shown that without careful management of geothermal reservoirs, they can become depleted. And this would render a geothermal power plant useless until reservoirs recovers. Now, but what has happened is that with advancements in geothermal energy technologies, this sustainability concern has become less of an issue. The efforts are now being made to inject fluids back into the reservoirs, geothermal fluids back into the reservoirs, as soon as the thermal energy has been utilized. And this would reduce the chance of a well becoming depleted. So this should not happen now. And then finally, the seismic instability. Some of the Earth's tremors have been linked to the use of geothermal energy. In various parts of the world that has happened. Now, often see it will be very minor or very small, but these earthquakes have been known to cause damage to the buildings, as was the case. Now, although these seismic activities will be less, but there have been cases that have been reported. For example, one example is Basel in Switzerland. Back in 2006, when a geothermal exploration project was blamed for a series of earthquakes that measured up to approximately 3.3 to 3.4 on the Richter scale. A further study in 2011 earthquake in the area around Salton Sea geothermal field in the United States found a strong correlation between the geothermal exploration and seismic activity. So these have been some of the disadvantages that have been associated with geothermal energy.